Well, good evening. I'm Jane Harf, and I have the pleasure of speaking for and coordinating and working with this set of energy forums, which we are calling Ohio's Energy Future Tour. I am very pleased to see so many people come out for the second stop in our tour. The first one was in Cleveland in December, and we had a great turnout there. We had great panelists there as well. And we are really building on that here. And we will be having 4 more, one in Dayton, one in Toledo, Cincinnati, and Athens. So we really are going to cover the state in an attempt to bring forward a dialogue on the future of energy in Ohio. What do we want Ohio's energy future to look like? How can we control costs? How can we protect public health and the environment? How can we support the businesses that are thriving in this sector and the tax advantages that come to communities where they locate? You will hear many of these themes tonight, and I just want to welcome you all, and I will now like to introduce our moderator for the evening, who I tell you, he managed to get out of the winter wonderland that Boston is. So we are very pleased that he is here this evening. And you will note on your biographical sheet that there were 2 moderators listed, because until 10 o'clock this morning, we really didn't know. So Eric has 20 years experience in senior management at Iberdrola Renewables. And you will hear more about Iberdrola and their project in Ohio a little later on. Before he joined Iberdrola, he was the energy director for the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. So he has spent his life's work on these issues from a number of different perspectives, and I think will be an excellent person to guide our discussion this evening. Eric Thumma.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Downtown Athletic Club. It's a privilege for me to join you all in Columbus. I've been here many, many times, and it's always great to be back. So my role tonight is moderator, and I'll just tell you a little bit about what we have planned for you this evening. So first of all, we are really encouraging public engagement and dialogue. I think that's the most important thing that we can have happen tonight. So as you listen to the panelists speak, please think of questions that you wish to ask to generate the type of conversation that we're looking for in this forum this evening. I note there is a microphone there, and so as the panels wrap up, you can go to that microphone and we'll take your questions. I would ask that the panelists please try to stick to the 5-minute range. Again, we want this to be an interactive dialogue between the panelists and the attendees. So we have 3 panels this evening, and those panels will each be about 15 to 20 minutes, and then we'll do about 15 minutes of questions. And as you will learn, I am very particular about time, so we will keep these running on time. The last sort of note is that there are comment cards there. So if you have comments, there's I think 3 to 4 more of these panels, so it could be something you'd like to see in the future, some recommendation for improvement on what's happened tonight, or if you don't, for some reason, want to get up at the microphone and you want to have a question, you can use that as well. Again, I am Eric Thumma. I am from a company called Iberdrola Renewables. We build wind farms and solar panels, and I just wanted to sort of share with you just some brief thoughts before we actually dive right into this. As we are in Ohio, which is America's heartland and such an important leader in all things political and social, I think we all come here tonight and want to see Ohio kind of join with the other states in advancing a clean and advanced energy economy. And so the message that I just wanted to leave with some of you and some folks out here that are part of that movement is a clean and advanced energy economy is happening all over the country in other states. It's not new, it's not novel, it's something that can be done in Ohio. And just looking at a few states that are your neighbors, Michigan is about to go to 10% renewables. Wisconsin, and I think this is very notable, is about to do 15% renewables. It's not something that people are hearing about, or it's not making news. It's something that's just happening, and it's notable, and it's part of the natural course of sustainable development and advanced economies that we're seeing across states in the United States. And then if you look just east across your border to my home state, you'll see a state that is really embraced in all the above energy strategy, and that's Pennsylvania, which is in the process of implementing some very advanced progressive energy efficiency goals, demand response targets, and meeting its RPS. So the states and many others show us that what we hope to achieve is happening all around us. And I think that that's a great way for all of us to come together tonight and get Ohio on track with the national trend and then move back into that leadership role where it belongs. So with that, I'd like to bring our first panel up to the dais. Dennis Bollinger from Energy Developments, Inc., Tom Roberts from Nationwide Energy Partners, Mark Schutz from Reflex Plastics, and Matt White from IGS Energy. Thank you. And I think, Dennis, you're going to start us off. Is that correct?
I think so.
Thank you.
Good evening. Now it works. My name is Dennis Bollinger, and I am Vice President of Development for Energy Developments. Energy Developments is a company that designs, builds, owns, and operates landfill gas to electricity facilities. We have a significant presence here in Ohio. In fact, it's the state in which we have our largest presence here in the United States. We currently operate 3 facilities generating about 56 megawatts of renewable energy, utilizing landfill gas as the fuel source. The power that we generate from these facilities goes to in many cases, to the local utility, which then distributes it to its individual ratepayers in its service territory. These are generally built and with a long-term view. Many of our contracts for the electricity that we generate are for 10 to 20 years. The landfill gas contracts that we enter into with the landfill owners are generally anywhere from 20 to 40 years in length. So when we come into a community and we build a facility, we are going to be there for a very long time. The process itself is one that is very interesting. When we put trash into a landfill and we cover it up, as it begins its decomposition process, it essentially breaks down into 2 gases, one being methane, which is natural gas that may come into your home that you use for heating now. The other is CO2. The landfill owner has a regulatory obligation to collect that gas so it does not escape into the atmosphere. They will either divert it and sell it to us, where we use it as a fuel source, or they burn it in a flare. Well, if it goes to the flare, it's a completely wasted resource. So as I said, we come in, we'll utilize it and put it to beneficial use. These facilities are designed and operate essentially on a continuous basis. The decomposition process does not stop. The requirement to collect that gas does not stop. So we run at about an 85% efficiency. So therefore you can see we are quite reliable, and the utilities in most cases are very happy to take the power because of its reliability. Energy Developments has been operating here in Ohio for about 15 years now. We came in initially back in the early 2000s. We invested in our plants, and we invested about $50 million in our initial tranche of plants. After Senate Bill 221 was passed back in 2008, we looked at Ohio as a state that was progressive, was looking to move forward into the renewable industry, and we looked at it as an opportunity for us to grow. We came in shortly after the bill was passed, and we invested another $55 million in new facilities and in enlarging our existing facilities. So we now operate or have about $105 million worth of investments here in the state of Ohio. We employ about 22 full-time staff. On any given day, we'll have 15 to 20 contractors on our facilities providing us with various services. Our annual budgets for our operations here are well over $5 million a year. We also looked at Ohio as an opportunity to come in and find very qualified personnel. With all of the activity going on here in industry, with both the gas production as well as regular industry, we find it an attractive area for very qualified people, and we are very fortunate that we get the opportunity to hire a lot of those people. We actually moved our base of operations from Texas to Ohio a few years ago. We have our vice president of operations here. We have our IT group is based here in Ohio, and our manager of U.S. productions is now based in Ohio, because we saw this as a state in which we were invited into, and we were invited to grow. Our investment here in Ohio, we would like to do additional investments in Ohio. The challenge that we now face is the fact that because of legislative changes, we have to stop and step back and take a look at whether or not this is still an attractive opportunity for us. The company that I work for is funded by a private equity fund. They're very willing to invest in the United States. They're very willing to invest in Ohio. They become very concerned, however, when we have situations where we have legislation that is passed that encourage this type of development, and then within a very short period of time, that legislation changes and puts that investment at risk. You know, a lot of things will get done in the investment world, but when there is additional risk, it adds to that, or it does add additional risk. They become skeptical, and it becomes harder for me to go out and get the capital from these investors to put that capital back into new projects here. I truly hope that Ohio continues to move forward with renewable projects and renewable power. I think Ohio can be a leader in that in the United States. And again, we are very, very vested in this state. We will remain here, but we need to make sure that when we do invest here, the rules are very clear, very established, and that they allow us to maintain our investment. So, with that.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tom Roberts. I'm the Senior Director of Operations for Nationwide Energy Partners, and I wanted to first say thank you for the opportunity to share our story tonight, and I thank all of you for attending to hear our perspective on this important issue. Nationwide Energy Partners is dedicated to creating innovations for energy management within the multifamily industry. We're very focused on Ohio. Ohio is our base, our home, and we have a very large portfolio within Ohio of multifamily. This is an industry that's well been overlooked. It's 25% of our housing resources in the United States, but as recently as 2014, September is when Energy Star finally came out with an Energy Star rating for multifamily. There's the American Council for Energy Efficient Economy estimates there's $3.4 billion a year that can be saved through energy efficiencies within multifamily homes. So, you know, why is this occurring? Why has multifamily been overlooked? Well, it suffers from what's called split incentive. And the split incentive is really just very simply the people that would pay for energy efficiency improvements are not the ones paying for the energy bills. So developers are going to develop apartment communities to meet the minimum standards that they need to get passed and get developed. Property managers are focused on, you know, renting apartments, not on replacing windows or insulation or anything else. And the apartment dwellers are typically a very transient group. You know, apartments are going to have 50% turnover per year. And those renters don't get to choose what appliances are there. They don't get to invest in upgrades. They are just occupying, and they are footing the bill for the energy efficiency of the home. So we look at multifamily communities and say there's a tremendous opportunity here to help these people, help this industry. You know, we look at a multifamily community and say, geez, look at all this real estate on rooftops that could be used for solar. We look at it, as the edge of a microgrid that we could put storage, energy storage, and collect storage there. We can leverage CHP resources and better, more efficiently use energy within that community. We look at more and more smart cars being developed, and what do those look like to be batteries within a community that is being managed as a single source of energy, not a distributed group of 200 or 300 individual residents or apartments that can't be coordinated, and their efforts can't be coordinated for what we really see as extending the use of our generation plants. If we can get a flat energy profile that the demand isn't going up and down by storing and trimming peaks and supplying energy in valleys, that's great. If we can reduce energy consumption, that's great and extends the utility portfolio we've already invested in. So that's how we look at energy efficiency for multifamily. That's why we're in that industry. And I really think that beyond just putting in place the incentives for green energy and for energy efficiency, that there's really an opportunity to create a regulatory environment that incents energy efficiency. There should be other companies like NEP that are allowed to compete on gaining energy efficiency within communities by rewarding and financially rewarding a flat energy profile, flat demand, and lower consumption. If you can't do that, it shouldn't be monetarily, aggressive or an incentive for you. But if you can do that, you should be able to be rewarded. So again, I thank you for your time. I look forward to any questions that you guys might have on our business. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Oop, too loud, sorry. Hello, everyone. Mark Schutz from Reflex Plastics. I enjoyed the perspectives of the other two gentlemen here. Mine is completely different yet again, which I think is part of an interesting story about the state of Ohio. It's a very diverse state. My company, I'm the founder of a company called Reflex Plastics, located in Mount Vernon, which is a small community about an hour north and east of here. I started it in 1991, and traditionally we were manufacturing mirrors and domes, plastic mirrors, plastic domes, and about 8 years ago we started working on a number of different ideas, and I want to share with you a little bit about the sort of the path that we've been on and where we are right now on that path. So the first thing we did was we saw nothing but energy prices rising pretty much uncontrollably at that time. Things have stabilized out since, but at that time we saw really high energy costs, and we focused initially on our own building. We have about a 100,000 square foot building that we renovated. It's just for example, we took the insulation from about R7 to R30, which sounds easy, but when you're talking about a building that in part was built 100 years ago, it's actually not so easy to do. So anybody would want to come see how we did that. It's kind of neat. I'd like to show it off. We put in energy efficient lighting with motion sensors. We installed a variable speed drive air compressor, which doesn't sound very sexy, but that piece alone reduced our energy consumption by about 10% on our electric consumption. We designed our own and then had a company build for us a process waste heat recovery system. So our own manufacturing process generates waste heat. So what we do is we intelligently capture that and intelligently use that waste heat around other parts of the building. And then for the remaining heat that we need, we put in some new gas furnaces, very small ones, I might add, compared to what was in there before. The net result being that within 1 year, it took about a year to do all that. Within 1 year, we reduced the heating demand by 90%, or maybe even as high as 95. I haven't checked it in a couple years. But we just brought our heating demand down to the point where probably if you took 3 or 4 people out of the audience here and you added up your gas bills, it would probably be similar to what it costs us to heat a 100,000 square foot factory. And then we also reduced our electric consumption by about 30%, which is also more than I thought possible at that time. So we're very happy with that. And the net result of all of that is that as a manufacturer of other products that have nothing to do with energy, it helps us be more globally competitive. About 30% of our business is outside of the U.S., and this is now part of a sustainable competitive advantage for us. So other companies doing the same sort of thing, I would encourage you to keep at it. Another effort we started maybe about 2 years after that was we had stumbled across, there's a fairly large brownfield in Mount Vernon which was about 44 acres, and it had been left behind by a company that had left town entirely and just left it sitting there. They had bulldozed the building, but they just left a big mess. And it had been sitting there for over a decade when we started looking at it, and we partnered with the mayor and pursued the idea of cleaning it up and developing it into a solar park, solar power plant. It took forever, but we did eventually land funding to clean the property up. And that funding is, the cleanup is actually underway, and by the end of 2015, there'll be 44 acres of land, which happens to be sitting over top of the aquifer that is the water source for Mount Vernon, will be cleaned up. And then really honestly, the hard work begins because of the legislative changes that have happened in the last couple of years are going to make it really tough to finance that project unless something changes here in the near future, which we think still could happen. But I'll be reaching out to those of you in the audience, and I see my friend David over there, to help us with that part of it when we get to that. The third area was we started working on the question of, okay, we manufacture mirrors. How can we utilize that technology in renewable energy and develop products that we could sell that would, as this market expands and grows, that would enable us to expand our manufacturing business. And so we started working on concentrating photovoltaics, because the idea was very simple. You know, if you can efficiently redirect light, you should be able to increase the electrical output of photovoltaic materials. And we ended up partnering with a group at Ohio State and partnered with another group at Case Western. And we ended up landing a couple of Third Frontier grants, which we worked jointly with OSU and Case Western on that research and development work. It led to some really interesting technology development in longevity of materials, in understanding how to improve the performance of photovoltaics. But along the way, about roughly 2.5 years ago, and so we saw the writing on the wall. The concentrating photovoltaics industry, not just in the United States, but globally, has kind of gone through a collapse. And it was just a reality of partly of a risky technology, but also there's been about an 80% decline in the price of traditional one-sun solar modules. And that pretty well killed the value proposition for concentrating PV. So we looked at that situation and said, oh, it's too bad, but how can we use this? We developed some great technology. How can we use it? And we came up with an idea for redirecting that technology into a commercial skylight. And we pursued that, developed it out. Now it's a product. We're launching it right now. We're going to be exhibiting at our very first trade show with that product next month up in Cleveland. And we're proud of it. We think it's a pretty neat thing. It basically, the simplistic idea is, rather than converting the sunlight into electricity and then running it through an inverter and then running electric lights, why not just bring the light right into the building and eliminate all the middlemen? So that's what we're doing, and we're excited about it. And if you're interested in learning more, I've got a stack of business cards. I'd love to, make connections with folks here in the audience. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark. I'm Matt White, and I'm General Counsel for IGS Energy. IGS is headquartered here in Central Ohio. We are a diverse energy company. We sell natural gas and electricity to over 1 million customers nationwide. We also develop combined heat and power, solar, distributed generation, demand response are a few of our products that we offer customers. Since this forum is titled Future of Energy, I just wanted to talk a little bit about what I see as the future of energy and my company sees as the future of energy, particularly with electricity. And I believe in the not too distant future, the way we currently use and consume electricity the model that we use to consume electricity will break down in a good way. Traditionally, we've had large-scale generators deliver through a large network of transmission and distribution lines. Three things are changing in our industry to drastically transform that model. I believe it's drastic reduction in solar energy costs, cheap natural gas, and the reduction in cost for battery storage. So what I believe the future of energy will be is you'll see a lot more on-site generation, distributed generation, and I think that's a good thing. Those technologies are cleaner generally, especially with solar and or combined heat and power with natural gas. They generally have fewer carbon emissions. They're more reliable. They don't rely on the grid, which can go down for many reasons, including national security issues and weather, and it's all domestic. So I think that's a positive trend that's occurring in our industry. I think, so as policymakers, we should encourage this to continue to happen. And I think probably some of the important things that we can do to ensure that these advanced technologies continue to develop is to create competitive markets. And when we do provide incentives, the incentives are given on a competitively neutral manner, so that all market participants are eligible for the incentives. We also have to be careful about subsidizing and maintaining inefficient power plants, and just keeping those open, just to keep those open, because when we create policy that subsidizes certain types of generation, inefficient generation, you're going to delay the advancement of some of the distributed generation technologies, whether that's combined heat and power and solar energy. I think Ohio has a choice in the next year or so how to set their energy policy. And it's very important that we do set energy policy in a way that promotes some of these advanced technologies that will really have great benefit for customers and all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, panel. Is that on? Uh-oh. This could be a problem. Okay, great. Okay, I'll speak up. I'm capable of that. First of all, gold star to the panel for staying on time. That's important. Good job. Take note, panels 2 and 3. So get your questions ready. We heard a lot of great themes in that panel. I just want to tease out a few of those while we're waiting for questions. I think one of the things that we heard was markets. Everybody's for markets. But I think the other thing we heard about was sort of public partnerships and the need for public policy. And if you look at the history of energy, not just renewables, it's really required public leadership because energy is a public good. And so I think what we heard from folks today was on the public side, they need certainty for their businesses to thrive. And then within that context, making that public policy that's sort of pushing us to the frontier and pushing for a vision of a clean energy economy should try to use competition and markets to push us to be even more innovative and competitive and diverse. So with that, I know this can't be a shy group. Let's, do we have any questions? Yes, ma'am?
Both Mr. Bollinger and Mr. Schultz talked about legislative changes. Could you be more specific about what they are so we can write to enlighten our legislators a little bit more with the pressure on them?
Well, as we all know, there currently is a study that the legislature is going through on renewable energy. That study has frozen essentially the renewable requirements in the state for probably the next 2 years. My thought is that if that study can be completed and we can get back to the original legislation where there was the promotion of these renewable policies, that's the best thing that can happen to the state.
Yeah, I would just add that the very threat of continual change and turmoil is destructive of investment of any type in industry. If you don't have some degree of certainty over a little longer run of where things are going to be policy-wise, then anything that you do is going to be subject to, whims of, the politics that will change, and that makes it very tough to make investments.
Yes, sir. In the blue, please.
I guess this is for the panel.
I think you're referring to 111D, the rulemaking that's coming out of that. I mean, I think that's going to change things significantly for the power generation landscape. I think, you know, whether you support it or not, what I believe is going to happen is you're going to see states have to come up with policies that reduce carbon, and you're going to see states have to come up with policies that incentivize renewables and incentivize energy efficiency. For a lot of the folks in the room, that's going to be good for them, and it's going to be good for the businesses in the room. It'll be a lot harder on carbon emitting resources, including coal and somewhat natural gas, but it is a significant change in our energy policy, particularly for electricity, which will have a lot of rippling effects.
Can I just ask a follow-up?
Sure.
Do you believe Ohio will go willingly into this?
I think kicking and screaming, based on what happened with 310, is a good insight into how Ohio will handle it. But
some background very briefly for those that may not know what we're talking about. The gentleman is referring to EPA's Clean Power Plan, which is referred to in sort of techie terms as 111D, and what EPA is proposing are regulations on limiting carbon dioxide emissions from power plants, existing power plants, and each state is going to be required to draft a plan to do that. Yes, sir, in the back in the yellow sweater.
Of the major industrialized countries, do you know who the highest percentage of their electricity comes from renewables? What that number is? Like France, England, Germany?
I'm sorry, I'm the moderator. I shouldn't answer the question, but people in this room know I tend to open my mouth. I know that Denmark, I think, just hit 40%, or at least are on the verge of hitting 40%. So to my knowledge, that is the highest that I am aware, but I'm happy to be corrected. Gentleman right here, maybe? Oh, okay. Anybody, Denmark going once, twice? Sold, Denmark is the winner. Yes, sir.
Question for Mr. White. I recently switched to your company for generation. I just went to PUCO's apples, and I could get 100% solar for way cheaper than I was paying for AEP.
good decision.
Do you see 221 causing any change in your guys' future investment in alternatives? Or not 221, but 310, the moratorium, the current moratorium. Is that going to change your investment and
Just the short answer is that we invest where there is the economic reason to invest. A state that allows us to have an economic return on solar generation, we will invest in that state. There are 50 states in this country, and you know, some have better than others, and some have much better than Ohio's. So whatever comes out of 310 will dictate, you know, if there are appropriate incentives in Ohio to develop solar that are competitively neutral, then we'll analyze it like we do every state, and we'll say this is where we're going to put our money. But if you create a market that's monopolized by utilities and does not allow investment in a competitively incentives in a competitively neutral manner, I mean, we would direct our resources to other states that are more conducive.